Welcome, everyone. So really excited to be here. Thank you for having me. Thanks for taking time out of your day to be a part of today's conversation. We'll definitely have time at the end for questions, and I look forward to that part of the discussion. Just a little bit about me. I have been in the world of marketing for a very long time. For probably for many of you from the 70s, I'm sure some of you can remember that era. Anyway, VisionEdge Marketing, we founded that in 1999 with a very strong focus on how do we help companies use data analytics, process, and measurement to accelerate their growth, create customer value, and improve performance. I'm really excited to have an opportunity to talk about one of my favorite topics, which is how do you accelerate growth? I know the past year for the hotel community and the senior living community was extremely challenging. And it was a lot more about survival than it was about thriving. But I hope it won't be long before we're all thinking about how we can grow these two communities. I have spent a good portion of my career in hotels. I have to say that for the most part, they've all been really great experiences. And we'll talk a little bit about the buying journey and in these industries. And I can say that when I'm looking for a hotel as a business traveler, the things that are important to me are very different than when I might be looking for a hotel for a family getaway. And another thing to note, I know we have two different audiences here. My mother was formerly the director of nurses for a senior living community. And so my very first job, the one where I gave Social Security out of my taxes, was working in that facility. And she was the head of nursing there for a very, very long time. And so I was very familiar with that space. And very recently, my mother is now in a senior living community. So again, kind of can speak to that journey and how that plays out. So those are a few just little bits about me, and let's talk a little bit about what we're going to do today. So there are three things I want to be sure we get through. I want to talk about customer centricity. We're in the age of the customer. It's all about customer engagement. It's all about customer experience. I know every other email you get probably uses those buzzwords. We've been talking about customer centricity since the day we started our firm. And I want to talk about why it's the key ingredient to organic growth very quickly. I know you know this because you're in the business of service and you understand the importance of that, but I do want to make sure we're all on the same page. The meat of the matter, obviously, is the four pivotal capabilities every organization needs to grow. It doesn't matter what industry you're in, whether you're profit or nonprofit, what region of the world that you're in, these pivotal capabilities are essential. And then 5 steps that you can take today, because I'm kind of a no-nonsense, kind of practical person, and I believe, what can I actually do with this? So I don't tend to spend much time in the theoretical. I will probably go into some detail, a little more detail than maybe you might be used to, but I want to make sure that you get something that you can use, because time is the most precious asset we all have. So let's start with the growth mandate. PwC, PricewaterhouseCoopers, has been doing studies for the last several decades with CEOs of various industries around the globe, talking about what their most important priority is. And without fail, almost without exception, every year, the number one priority is growth. KPMG has done similar studies, not quite as long, but for quite a number of years. And they too have found that the number one priority consistently is growth. Last year, Gartner did a study with CEOs, and it's interesting. The number one priority is growth. So this is the growth mandate for every organization, is growing. What I found interesting, and maybe you will too, is the Gartner study shared all 10 priorities in the order of their importance. And the number one priority, while it was growth, look where customer is. It's number 6. And look where innovation is. It's the very last priority. Yet we know from all our work and from people like Peter Drucker that the only things that drive growth are customers and innovation. So there's kind of a disconnect there. And I want us to close that disconnect. And that's one of the things that I'm very passionate about doing. I'm not the only one who's passionate. If you're not familiar with Nick Mehta, he's the CEO of Gainsight. And his whole premise is in sync with ours, that customers are the only source of growth. And I love this quote by him, which says, the success of your business is inherently intertwined with the success of your customer. Pretty simple, pretty straightforward, makes perfect sense. Easier to say than it is to do sometimes. So let's take a look at where we go from here and how do we make it happen. And this was the focus and why we 20 years ago created what we call the growth wheel, which today is called the circle of traction. And it is a process, a repeatable process to achieve growth. We do not have time today to go through every node in the circle of traction. It's in the book, Fast Track Your Business. And I'll mention that one more time at the end. I'm not here to try to promote that. I just want you to know there is a process, a proven process that we have been using for a very long time that our customers have found successful. But today, I only want to focus on 4 things. First is, what does it mean to have a customer-centric approach? Second, how do you build an outcome-based growth plan from actionable data-derived insights? Third, operational excellence, which I am assuming, because you're the 2 industries that are with us today, the hotel/hospitality and senior living, operations are critical, fundamental to being able to do what you do. But we have to apply that same operational excellence, that same rigor and diligence to your marketing. And then lastly, performance management for fast maneuvering. So those are the 4 things we're going to look at. As we move through here, I want to remind all of us, at the start of the year, I'm sure you have a plan. And I wouldn't be surprised if your plan has revenue targets. In the hotel industry, maybe it has something to do, for example, with revenue from events or / catering, maybe revenue from rooms, different kinds of rooms, for example, maybe revenue from food and beverage. And I'm sure the senior living has some kind of P&L that's broken out into revenue components. We don't market to buckets of revenue. And so when we build plans with a focus on revenue, if we don't include the people we're going to market to, we're already off to a start that will not help us win. So we market to people. And in the words of Peter Drucker, the purpose of business is to create a customer. And that is why customer centricity is the most fundamental thing we can talk about today. If you don't take anything away from this conversation, but that's the most important message I want to leave you with. And so let's dive into pivotal capability number 1, a customer-centric approach. And if you have a piece of paper or a sticky note, I'm going to ask you some questions. This is part of the interactive part of this presentation. Don't you just love Zoom? So I want you to put yourself in your customer's shoes. I'm going to ask you 10 questions. I want you to answer those questions on a scale of 1 through 10 from their perspective. 10 being strongly agree and 1 being strongly disagree. Okay? I have them all on one page, so we don't have to go through a whole bunch of build slides, and I'll just read them out. Trust your gut. Put the first number that you instinctively lean toward. First question, and think of it in this answer. As a provider, a supplier, or a partner, you are able to mobilize your company on our behalf better than your customers. So that's the customer saying that. 1 through 10. 10, they would strongly agree. 1, they would strongly disagree. Number 2, you play a leading role in shaping the supply chain in which we operate. Number 3, you are an integral and essential part of our supply chain. Number 4, you understand how we purchase and decide to buy. Number 5, you go out of your way to understand what value means to us more than your competitors. Number 6, you carefully develop new products or services with what we value as your driving factors. Number 7, you've done a good job integrating your processes with ours. Number 8, you understand our business or our needs well enough to create solutions that will give us a competitive advantage. Number 9, number 10, start with we. We, that is your customer, can count on you to know which of your products or services we buy and whether the current portfolio is still appropriate. 1 through 10, 10 being strongly agree, 1 being strongly disagree. And last question, we prefer your products and services over your competitors because they meet our needs or solve our problems better. Give you 1 second to kind of catch up with me. Okay, so you've answered all of those. How did you score? For any one of those questions that you scored less than 8 on, that's probably one of the questions that you need to go and address, just in order to improve your customer centricity. This will get you sort of in the right place, focused on the right things. Being customer-centric is a choice. And what it means is that every single decision that your organization is going to make starts with an answer to these 5 questions. What are our customers' needs, pains, and passions? How are we solving these today? How can we help them solve them and help solve them better than our alternatives? And how will we communicate this value? That's essentially the 5 key questions for every decision. If you answer these 5 questions as part of every decision, you are well on your way to being customer-centric, because customer centricity really means that you understand what's of value to your customers and what they value from you and how you will deliver on that value. So I want to repeat that. What's of value to your customers? What do they value that you deliver? And how will you deliver what they value? This is a good time to segue into the next 3 capabilities. So back to Gartner, different study. They did a study on the top priorities for marketing for 2021. And there are 3 of them. And it's kind of interesting. They're the same 3 next pivotal capabilities that we've been talking about for the last several years. Number 1, analytics. Number 2, strategy. And number 3, operations. So we're going to go into each one of these, and hopefully we'll have time to talk about them in more in-depth during the Q&A. So let's talk about pivotal capability number 2, building an outcome-based growth plan from actionable data-derived insights. Now, here's what I know from many of the people we work with. There is no shortage of data. Data is coming from everywhere imaginable and even unimaginable. And it's growing at exponential rates. We do not have a data shortage problem. What we do have is an insights shortage problem. So let's kind of explore what that means and how we fix it. Here's a question for you. What is one customer decision you need to make to grow? If you did absolutely nothing else this year, what is one customer decision you need to make to grow? I would love to have that conversation with you.
Hello.
Because this is one of the key questions we ask every company we work with who wants to talk about growth. And until we can know the answer to this question, it's really hard to know what to do with all the data at our disposal. So if you don't know the answer to this question, this is a really good conversation for one of your leadership team meetings. If we knew the answer to this one, if we could make this one decision, what would that one decision be? It might be about a new service we need to bring online. It could be a new market we need to enter. It could be something we need to do for existing customers. It could be new partners that we might need to have, new channels we might need to use, a variety of different things that we need, the decision we would need to make that would help us grow. We need to know what is the one, right? So we might have a variety of things that we think we need to know, but we need to really narrow that down to focus, because companies who are really truly successful at growth are very, very focused. They don't tend to bounce around and try and do a whole myriad of things. Even the largest companies don't try to do hundreds of things. They're very, very focused on a few key things. We'll talk about that in a little bit more. So once you have this question and you have made up your mind regarding the decision you need to make, then you need to ask yourself the next question. What is the one thing you need to know that would help you with your decision? Like, this is a decision I need to make, and in order to know what the right course of action is, what do I need to know? This will really give context to your data, because otherwise we're just boiling an ocean of data, and it's impossible to do. I don't care how large an organization you are, you will bring you to your knees if you try to boil the ocean of data. So the key thing is, and the wonderful words of Bernard Marr, you need to know what you need to know. This data will be in a variety of places. We're going to talk about that next. But one thing, if you just knew this one thing, you would know what to do. And that takes us to how do you find the answer? So a lot of companies like to skimp here. And I'm going to just say, please don't skimp. You need to be able to find the answer. And that may take an investment of resources. You might have to do primary research. You might have to establish a customer advisory board if you don't have one, or go to your customer advisory board. You might have to look in your CRM or your ERP data or your social media and really, or your Google Analytics, and really hone in on key data. But you have to know how you're going to find the answer. That's a very key part of the process. And this is one of the places where I think people often miss out. They don't know how they're going to find the answer. They understand the decision. They might even understand what they need to know, but then they're lost. And the key to not being lost is being clear on how you're going to go find the answer and know what that's going to be. To do that today, every organization needs to be able to flex data and analytics muscle. Now, I know there's a lot of talk about artificial intelligence, deep learning, machine learning, where something else is going to do the smarts. But that's not really going to be the best approach. And I'm going to tell you why. Yes, they can crunch the data faster than we can. And it would be great to use AI for doing that purpose. But they might miss important things. They might miss non-obvious data. They will not necessarily know how to look at the data in the same lens or variety of lenses that you want. People need to be able to do that, because one question will lead to the next. And you want to not only use this to derive customer insights, but you also have to put it in the context of competitor moves. And that also takes a different kind of intelligence, human intelligence. So flex your data and analytics muscle. Well, how might you do that? Let's just say that's not something you feel is one of your top strengths. How might you do that? Well, first, you've got to find the right patterns. So you got all this data, you're doing all your analysis, and the point of doing an analysis is to surface or reveal patterns. Now, the thing about patterns is that not all patterns are relevant, right? So you want to be able to look at that. And sometimes something that was a pattern is just a fluke. And sometimes a real pattern takes peeling the onion a little bit more to be able to see it. So you got to find the right patterns in your data. And that does take really good analytics. And because data is pervasive and permeates the entire organization, a lot of companies have tried to create a data or analytics center. And that can work. But if it's not properly staffed with enough people and all the entire organization is trying to use data, they will be carrying more on their shoulders than they can bear. So it is helpful if everyone in the organization today has some degree of data analytic skills. They don't have to be necessarily a data scientist, but they should be data smart, analytics savvy. They should be able to look at patterns and recognize a pattern that is germane, that is relevant. Once we have a pattern that we think is relevant, the very next thing we need to do with that in this pivotal capability is incubate that information a little bit and then see if we can derive an insight from the pattern, and then write out a sentence that says, the reason this insight matters to our business is because, or because of this insight, we should be doing X, or we ought to consider Y, right? You want to get that insight and be able to understand its implications, its ripples, its ramifications to your specific business. Of course, nothing matters if you don't take action. So once you have gone through this process, you want to decide, based on the patterns that are relevant, the one that has the insights that you've got, which ones are going to have the most impact, be the most meaningful, take action. Now, how do you decide which ones to take action on? Because you can't do it all. I'm going to say that again. Well, you might want to look for the things that will have the highest impact in the shortest period of time, that will be the least difficult to implement, cost the least amount, right, and give you a relatively quick win. I like to set up criteria when I am looking at data, and those are some of the 5 criteria that we set up. I'll repeat that. The impact, right, the time, the cost, the effort, and the win. 5 things. So if you're thinking about the action and you're trying to decide, we've got 3 or 4 ideas here that we could take, you want to have some way to prioritize those. And we find that that criteria can be very helpful. So you decide on the actions that you're going to take, and then how do you apply them? Well, let's go back to the fact that one of the things that you have to know today is the customer journey. If you're going to be a customer-centric organization, you really need to be looking at it from the outside in and understand the customer journey. Now, some of the customer journey is not going to be, it will not be revealed to you immediately. So you want the data to help you figure that out. And I love this quote by David Edelman, who says, the customer journey is an iterative, complex pinball of touch points. So I want to give you a way to look at the customer journey and try to apply it a little bit to your industries. So this is the stages a customer goes through from the outside in. And I want to use these stages. I know if you have classic marketing training, you've probably seen other things like awareness and then demand or something, right? Something along those lines. I would like you to reconsider what it should look like, because we're in a very different world today of how things work. So the stages are for customers. They investigate, they identify, they evaluate, they select, they decide, they purchase, and then hopefully they become a member of your community and they advocate. We're going to come back to these. It doesn't matter whether I'm checking out at the grocery store line and I'm trying to consider whether I should put that magazine or chocolate bar in my cart. I'm going to go through this, or I'm making a decision about which facility I would like to have for my 30th wedding anniversary, versus, which will probably involve more people and be a longer process, versus where should my aging mother spend the remaining years of her life? What community should she be in? Also, a much more complex journey, but the same exact process. I want to talk a little bit about what you need in each one of these stages in order to be effective and how they relate. So in the investigate stage, this is about being discoverable. It's not about awareness anymore. It's about being discoverable, because all investigations begin, I know, with Google, right? So when we were having this conversation about our 30th wedding anniversary for our facility, or where mom should spend, hopefully, God willing, the next 15 plus years of her life, we started with Google. And that means we have to be discoverable. And what's really important at this stage is your keywords and your SEO. And in order to have that, you got to have good content, right? But it's all really about being findable, being discoverable. LinkedIn, peer groups like the one you're in right now, infographics, third parties, whether those are publications or analysts, are all part of this stage of the journey. Then once we've investigated, we start to hone in and narrow in or identify what we think our solutions might be. And those solutions will vary. Like, do I really, do I want a boutique hotel? Do I want a large hotel? Do we want a step down facility or not? These would be things, what kinds of solutions am I looking for? In this stage, the goal is to be engaging. That's what's critical. So having published articles out there will be really important. Ebooks, your newsletter will matter, so getting people to sign up. Educational webinars are really important, particularly in the senior living community. How-to videos or podcasts, presentations go here, checklists go here. Like one of the facilities that we looked at with my mother had a great checklist on preparing for the move. Product literature and data sheets for more technical organizations, but tip sheets, right? Tips for planning a wedding or planning an event, expert guides, that falls into this identify. Because people are in that stage of trying to figure out what makes the most sense for them and the direction they want to go. That's when they move into evaluate. And in evaluate, the key role you want to play is the role of advisor. You want to become a trusted advisor, a trusted authority. So this is where things like white papers and sales meetings and the salesperson, actual product-oriented webinars, demos, whether that's, and visual cues will be important. FAQs are really important here. Again, very important, particularly in senior living, as I can say personally. Assessments, also important. resource pages, and your ratings. So your BBB ratings, your DUNS ratings, those kinds of things will become very important here. Once we go past evaluation, we've probably narrowed our choices as a customer, and now we're in selection. And selection is really about your ability to provide proof. Now the things that matter are customer stories, customer referrals, reviews. These are really important. Fact sheets are really important here. All the personalized communication that you can possibly do, your certifications, these are the things that matter in the proof part, which is all about selection. So now they decide, they're going to make a decision and then make a purchase. Your job here is to earn the contract, to close the deal. This takes comparison charts. I remember, when we were making decisions for our 10-year wedding anniversary, well, we had a couple of comparison charts we made of our own, a pro and con list, right? That's a comparison chart. And so we had to make our own. Now that, but now facilities have gotten a lot better about doing that and helping us with that process. Making it easy to do business with you, making the legal part really easy, the agreements easy to understand in everyday language, whatever that might be. And then eventually we purchase, and the goal is to turn them into advocates. So this is the customer journey. We have to understand these steps. Then we need to understand not only the steps, but the who. And the who comes in kind of 3 flavors. And you're probably familiar with this. I just picked an everyday example that we've all probably encountered. We all work inside organizations. We probably have all had a conversation with someone who carries the title CFO, Chief Financial Officer. The CFO is a role, right? And you can identify them on an org chart. That's a role. And CFOs have a profile. And we are very accustomed to mixing these 3 words, role, profile, and persona, and using them interchangeably, but they are not the same. And they have huge implications for how we market. So if we just market to roles, CFO maybe versus CEO, right, or something like that, that would be one thing. But now when we're talking about the profile, and we want to be a little bit better about how we communicate with them, we're really saying all CFOs have these kinds of attributes. Their education, their years of, they're in their career, their average income, their primary responsibilities. That's different than a persona, which is much more of a psychographic understanding of the human, right? As there are different kinds of CFOs. So there are some CFOs who see themselves as very advisory, sort of a visionary lieutenant to the CEO, a strategic advisor. But then there are other CFOs who see themselves as keeping the company out of trouble, keeping the company financially solvent. So those are 2 different personas. Usually there's a handful of personas for every profile and role. And so that's something to think about. And that's going to be important because when you think about the hotel industry, right, or the senior living industry, there are definitely different personas. And those personas matter, right? So that's going to be really important. Understanding the journey and understanding the personas so that you can help them go through that journey in a way that will be relevant and compelling and meaningful to them. Because remember, our job is to solve a problem or give them a solution to meet a need. And that means we have to really understand them well to do that. And that goes back to what we talked about in pivotal capability number 2, the data. To build personas, you definitely have to have data, and you definitely need to be able to build patterns. Okay, I thought I'd just pull an example. So this is from a customer a while back, not particularly in your space, but I think it really helps illustrate the concept. So in this instance, they're matching their internal stages with the customer buying journey. So internally, they talk about contact, connection, conversation, consideration, consumption, and community. So they're talking about consumption being purchase and consideration being selection, conversation being evaluation. So they're matching these up. Then they have done this study to understand what channels and what touches are appropriate based on the data they've gathered and understanding of the journey and the persona. And you can see a couple of things that are important. One, it's not a linear journey. So even though in that slide it looks like it's linear, people, it's not that straightforward. Also, they can be in stages longer in some and shorter than in others. And they can be doing a variety of things at each stage. It's not like they just do one thing or consume one thing or interact in one way. So a connection might be some type of engagement. They might download something or read something, but then a conversation is some kind of interaction, something more in depth. Right? So this is just an example of how this persona for this company in a particular market went through. And you can see that for them, social media was a starting point because someone did a search that took them to something that was on the social media platform, but by the way, doesn't exist anymore, SlideShare, right? But probably has been replaced with YouTube, which is now one of the most prominent places that people go. That went to a LinkedIn display. This is all an early stage where they downloaded an offer for an analyst report. Crossing over, that took them to an industry event where the company was making a presentation so they could actually see the company in action. Probably didn't really engage with them there, but they were able to at least hear them, see them, see if what they had to say what was relevant to what they were trying to do. That led them over to the website where they saw a really cool white paper. That was one of the primary offers. Jumped them over, which made them say, you know, I'd like to get more content. So they signed up for the newsletter, jumped on over. They sent out a pay-per-click for an online demo, which might be like a virtual tour in the senior living space. And then jumping over to wanting to do a chat or a phone to have a real conversation. And then wanting to talk to a customer or listen to a customer story or watch a customer video or attend a webinar where a customer is talking. That ultimately led to a face-to-face kind of an event, a sales meeting, a sales presentation, a walkthrough of the facility, that first walkthrough. And so you can see how this might apply. Okay. The thing about being in the hospitality, hotel, and senior living world is that it's all about service. Service is the experience. Yes, of course, when I pick a hotel and I'm a business traveler, for me, it's got to be safe, clean, have Wi-Fi, and be relatively close to my customer site. Those are my criteria. But after that, the things that are important are that distinguish one from another fall into these categories. So the Association of Service Quality, ASQ, many years ago, did a tremendous amount of research and has continued to do that research and created a ServQual assessment. And that ServQual is around these 5 key dimensions of service quality. And what you'll see here is that the number 1 criteria, dimension of service quality is reliability. It accounts for 32% of the experience, followed by responsiveness of 22%. So that makes up over 50%. Are you reliable? Are you responsive? So if you do nothing else in your organization, you're thinking about your customers, whether existing or future, these 2 dimensions are the most critical dimensions, followed by assurance, followed by empathy, followed by tangibles. So training is really important, obviously, of your people. And I know, having worked with folks in the hotel industry, that there's a lot of training on all 5 of these dimensions. I'm assuming that's true in the senior living as well. All right, I want to get to pivotal capability number 3, and this is about strategy. So you can't really build a strategy if you don't know what winning means. So when can you declare success? And again, if you're customer-centric, you're going to build your wins around customers and relate those customers in some way to revenue and growth. So it's all about what customers do we need to win, and where are they, who are they, and how many. And you want to remember that you need to fit your competition into your measure of success. So once you have decided what you will use to declare success, you want to translate that into business outcomes. This is when we review so many plans, whether they're strategic plans or growth plans or marketing plans or sales plans, and we review plans, hundreds of them a year. That's one of the services we provide. We notice how few of them have business outcomes. If there are no set of business outcomes, people will create plans. They'll create a sales plan, a marketing plan with some objectives, and they may or may not work in harmony with each other. Business outcomes are the sheet music for the orchestra, right? The CEO or whomever is the conductor, there's sheet music. These are the business outcomes and the overarching plan. And then the orchestra is made up of the individual components. You know, there's the horn section and there's the string section and the percussion section, right? All these different sections like sales, marketing, and service, or whatever they are, but they're all off the same sheet of music. And that's the value of a business outcome. And if those are not clear, those are not written down, those are not the starting point for every plan in your organization, then I recommend that you stop what you're doing and do that work. It is the starting point for everything that follows. And it starts with the bets you're going to make and the hills you're going to take. And you want to identify them right at the very beginning. And you want to determine who in the orchestra is going to be responsible for that part of the sheet music. Think of it exactly like that. This is where you're starting to determine what is the music, how you're going to play it, and who's going to play. Now, business outcomes should meet these parameters. How you will achieve your customer revenue and growth targets, they need to be quantifiable. It can't be, we're going to get more customers in XYZ market, right? We're going to get more people in the wedding market. We're going to build our wedding market, or we're going to get more people in the memory care, more customers for memory care. It can't really be like that. It's got to be much more specific to define which customers, who, back to your persona, how many, and what is it you want them to buy. So that's, in customer terms, that should be clear for everyone. I mean, one of my early careers, I had the opportunity to work for a fabulous company for 14 years, Motorola. I worked in the semiconductor business. And every quarter, one of the key things was to have clarity around business outcomes. There was business outcomes for the year, and then they were set up in quarterly milestones. And we were expected to know right out of the gate the top 5 business outcomes for that quarter in customer terms. If you want to make sure your team, your whole team, understands what business outcomes are, if you start asking somebody, what are the top 5 customer things we need to do, or customers we need to win, or whatever it is, and you're not getting the whole same answer, then you don't have clear business outcomes. So it's a nice little litmus test. Okay, then since we're talking about marketing, because marketing is your growth engine, what do you expect marketing to do to help you achieve that business outcome, and how will you know they did? Right? So that's kind of where you want to answer that question, which takes us to our last pivotal capability, operational excellence. And as I said, I know that you are industries that have operations humming. I just want to encourage you to have that kind of operational excellence applied to your marketing. Your business, every organization runs on process, and marketing is no exception. Yet I am amazed at how few marketing organizations have documented processes. We have all these organizations spending a tremendous amount of money on marketing technology and building huge MarTech stacks, thinking that some way or another, that's going to help them be more efficient. But if we don't have a documented and defined process, it isn't going to matter. I have a story I tell. I don't have time to tell it today, but it's a story about my father who loved to make things. He was a really good handyman, and I loved to go with him to the hardware store. And one time I went with them in the hardware store, and I saw a really cool tool that I thought we could use at home. I must have been about 4 or 5 years old, and I remember being very excited about this particular tool. And without going into too much detail, one of the things my father said that I've never forgotten is, he told me, that's a very cool tool. He said, if you don't know how to do it manually, then all a tool will allow you to do is run things faster, do more damage faster. So be careful about your tools. Make sure your people understand the process and what the process is, why it's important, how it works, before you try to do things faster with a tool. Again, I am an avid fan of Peter Drucker, so I'm going to pull him out again. Effectiveness is doing the right things. Efficiency is doing things right. Technology helps us with efficiency. Process helps us with effectiveness. Get your processes in place first. Be effective. Do the right things, and then work on how to do those things faster. Which takes us to operational excellence. So in the world of marketing, as your growth engine, there's an upstream and a downstream. And upstream comes before the downstream. In fact, if the upstream is not done well, then you will not get the right fish in the downstream. So I want to talk about these as we begin to wrap up. Upstream is the strategic process of identifying and fulfilling your customers' needs. It's developing really clear customer segments. It's analyzing how your customers are going to use your product and your service. And it articulates, helps you determine what is your competitive advantage in order to acquire a customer. Downstream is every effort you're going to do to motivate those customers to adopt your products and services. It's all the things you do around advertising, promotion, branding, PR, content, SEO, and any other communication or engagement you do. That's all downstream. We have a tendency, often in marketing, to get very enamored and focused on the downstream. But what we really need to do is be sure that we have done the upstream well. So high-performing organizations use both. I want to spend a few minutes on each one. Upstream, think of upstream as demand with a capital D, because isn't that what we're trying to do, is generate demand? This defines your company's value proposition. It directs your innovation process for new services, new products. It involves how you use data and analytics to get customer insights, competitive intelligence, do that segmentation and differentiation. And the measures and metrics are very different. Category ownership, customer lifetime value, and share of wallet. I have a list of questions here that I thought might be helpful for you to understand what goes into the upstream. Things like, what problems can we solve and what solutions should we bring to market? What segments and what customers in these segments should we target and serve? How do we position our products and services for these segments and customers? How do we gain access to customers? How do we accelerate the adoption of our products or services with these customers? Which of our customers are loyal and which ones are at risk? These are the kinds of questions that are in the upstream. Very different from the kinds of things that are in the downstream. Demand with a little d. This is what supports your company's value proposition. So this is the programs that are going to deliver now. Lead gen and account-based marketing, the things that everyone talks about that are all the buzzwords today, all fall into the downstream. Data and analytics that emphasize activities like content and your website and touch points like emails and events and channels like the call center and the chatbot and social media, social networks. This is all downstream. And the measures are very different. Measures are like visitors and mentions and SEO rankings and downloads of content and contacts that are created and appointments and meetings held. Very different. Which is why, since we're talking about measures, we are in pivotal capability number 4, performance management for fast maneuvering. It's the last one we're going to do, and then we'll open up for conversation. So this is all about measuring and understanding the difference between measure, metrics, and KPIs. I think it's really important that we have an agreed upon vocabulary. So I've been using a lot of these words, and I want to be sure we're all on the same page. Data, measures, metrics, and key performance indicators are all related to one another, with data being the big picture and key performance indicators being a very small subset of that. So data is like a location, a zip code, an SIC code, a contact information like an email address or a name. Measures, this is a quantity, and some of them are in your control and some are not. Like someone's height is not in someone's control, but their weight is. And for us in the world of business, it might be number of companies or number of households. It might be number of customers. It might be number of partners. It might be number of orders or number of rooms booked or number of this, capacity of a facility. These are all measures. And site traffic falls here. Metrics are a special form of measure, and they're a standard of performance. So in the world of marketing, conversion rate, usage rate, new product or service adoption rate fall here. A KPI is a metric. And the way I like to help our customers understand a KPI is it's something you're willing to spend money on to change. And this is really important because far too many companies have way too many KPIs. They call them KPIs, but they're really metrics. Identify the very few you're willing to spend money on to change. It could be category ownership. It could be customer footprint or expansion. It could be market share. It could be any number of things. Metrics, though, once you decide what they are, you have to report on them because that is accountability and performance management. And to do that in marketing, we need to do a better job of speaking the language of business. We're accountable for finding, keeping, and growing the value of customers in marketing. So our measures and metrics should tie to finding, keeping, and growing. We have different ways that we can report, but we must report. We can report using scorecards, which are often used to look at campaigns, and dashboards, which are often used for a bigger picture view and get an underlying view of why something is happening. The key is to select the right KPIs that will let you track, manage, and improve your performance, that will provide the information that demonstrates contribution and impact on the business and helps you manage risk. So I love this cartoon by Tom Fishburne, the marketunist, excuse me. This is a pretty recent one. Our new dashboard has all the different KPIs we can track. And if you notice this little one down here in the far right corner is what they're talking about. What's that KPI that keeps trending to 0? And the answer is, it measures how well we understand the other KPIs. I just crack up every time I look at this particular cartoon. But what should be on the dashboard? Well, for customer-centric, there are some very specific categories. I get asked all the time, what should our KPI be? Tell us what the metric should be. It's not going to be the same for every company, even every company in the same industry. But I can tell you that there are key categories that should be on every dashboard, particularly every marketing dashboard. Customer acquisition and retention, something around that. Something related to customer advocacy and value, like lifetime value, it could be margin, it could be loyalty, it could be share of wallet. Something related to customer equity, something around product, service, innovation, and adoption, because that's part of our job, is to get people to buy something. How we are competing, our competitive positioning, because again, that's a key part of our job. Share of preference, rate of growth. This is really kind of an important attribute in the hotel space, share of preference and rate of growth, and market value. And then of course, the show me the money, something related to the finances, and then productivity, back to operational excellence. Okay, this is a dashboard. You can find it on our website. It's an example of a customer, a real customer who allowed us to take it and homogenize it, and you can kind of see how it's set up. And you can see these little green targets. That's what they want to achieve. And why this dashboard is so helpful, and why you want to construct something that has this kind of logic in it. So it's one thing to have dashboards made up of a bunch of math and numbers, but it's another to have the logic. And so this dashboard has logic in it. And what this helps you do is say, so if all the ones on the top of this screen are in the green zone, but none of marketing's numbers are in the green zone because these are business outcomes on the top, does that mean somebody else is moving the needle? It also could mean we're not measuring the right things in marketing, but it tells us something, right? Now, if all the things on the top none of them are in the green zone, and all of marketing's numbers are in the green zone, that would tell us either A, somebody else is not pulling their weight on their outcomes, or B, we are not maybe having the right measures because the things we're doing are not impacting the needle. Or maybe they are impacting the needle again, but the other entities in the organization are not pulling their weight. And so you can see how that plays all the way from top to bottom. Same thing for the next level and the next level. So I'm coming to an end, and I really do want to make sure we have time to talk. I want to give you 5 steps you can take today. I hope I've impressed upon you how important it is to take a customer-centric approach. Make every decision start with those 5 questions. Second, build an outcome-based, measurable growth plan that's based on intelligence and insights. Flex those data muscles and those analytic skills. Map the customer journey and define the personas. Now, I know there are workshops you can do in a day, but mapping the customer journey and defining personas don't happen in a day. I know there are workshops you can do in 2 hours. I can assure you, you cannot map the customer journey and define personas in 2 hours. But it can be done, and it doesn't have to take a long time. Just set your expectations. It's going to take several weeks to do this because you also want to validate it. Who do you want to validate it with? Customers, either through primary research or a customer advisory board or some other fashion. Establish performance targets and measure them, and then report and adjust. Iterate quickly. That's the whole point of a dashboard, is so that you can quickly adjust. That's what enables you to be agile. So iterate quickly. So it's all about growth. Customer centricity is a choice. It takes a very different lens, a very different focus. It is about being proactive, not reactive. Solving problems and creating value is what we're all about. And to do that, you have to do the upstream before the downstream. What you do with insights from the data is what's important, way more important. I think back, again, having been having had a career over several decades ago, we had far less data, but it seemed that we could do a lot make much better decisions with how less we had, because we really understood how to analyze that data. And then strive for operational excellence. So with that, what I'd like to do is, if you're interested in learning more about how you can fast track your business, I hope you'll check out our book. And if you do, there's a free gift, and that is an organic growth readiness assessment for all of you that you can just download for free. And the information for that is in the book. I hope that was helpful. I know that I'm right up on our time, and I know I'm pushing it, but I hope we have a few minutes for questions.
Yes, we do have a few minutes for questions, and I have a couple I jotted that I was gathering. So let me get to my little list I had here. Very simple, very short, easy first question. Do you like surveys? I know it seems very, very short, but so do you like surveys? I know that a lot of people do them, but is there like a better way to approach them?
So I'm going to answer that with a yes and yes. Here's what I like. I like primary research. There is nothing better than primary research if you can afford to do it. Now, you happen to belong to these communities, the senior community forum and the hotel community forum, and I bet as a group, you could do some research that everybody could benefit from. That's primary research, and then that way you could pool your resources. Because doing primary research alone can sometimes be very challenging. It depends on the question. So the point of research, which does require some kind of instrument, and an instrument is a survey, whether that's a telephone, done as a poll, done through the mail, or done when someone's on site. Like last time you went to the doctor, did any of you see when you went to the doctor, they had a little survey you can fill out right there in the doctor's office about right after the experience. So I don't know if any of you have seen that. We have that here in Austin. On the way out the door, fill out the survey. So there's different kinds of things that you're trying to measure or look at in terms of research. But the answer, it was a short question, so I'm going to give it a short answer. Yes, please do primary research. It's not the same as listening to social media. And yes, you need some kind of instrument. And different questions take different kinds of instruments and are delivered at different times. Next question.
One of the questions is, do you have a preference on how to best communicate with your customer base in the current marketplace? So we talked about surveys, but is there any other suggestions like that you could actually make around that? Email, or do you still like recommendation cards?
So first of all, it's really important to communicate with customers, especially right now. Obviously, you don't want to overwhelm your customer, but you definitely want to be communicating with them in some kind of cadence. Now, the cadence with existing customers might be different than the cadence with prospective customers. I'm going to come back to that in a moment. I'll give you an example. But it is important to communicate, and it depends on what their preferences are. So I know some senior living facilities have Facebook pages, and that's for their community. And that is maybe a really great way to continue to keep some of your seniors, the people that live there, and their families connected and informed. But email is still important. Mail can still be important. There's lots of different channels, and it really depends on what you're communicating and who you're communicating to. So just an example from a senior community. As I mentioned, we just went through, over the last few years, this process of trying to figure out where my mom was going to live. We were selling our family home. She needed to be in a different place, and a place that hopefully she'll be for a while. I think that there will be another step because she chose something that doesn't have a step down opportunity. But we looked at a number of places that did have a variety of things, and those people have stayed in touch, but some have gone overboard in staying in touch because I have already told them that we've made a decision and they're still trying to sell. But they could be doing other things because eventually I do believe my mother will make another step. So it's not important. What the question here isn't whether you should be, it's what should be in that communication. That's what's important. So where are they in their journey should determine what the communication is and understanding what their preferences are for that. Some people like to get text messages, others do not. Some people are happy to get email, others do not even look at their email. Some people don't mind a phone call, other people never answer their phone. So you really need to understand your personas. This is why personas are so important. Next question.
There was another question that came through near the end of your keynote, and it was, do you have a personal preference on how best communicate with customers based on the current market and current trends?
That was, I think, the kind of
That was the
question, but I just to add on to that, the persona should define how, and the journey should define what, if that's helpful. And the answer, the overarching answer is yes. Communicate. Don't go dark. Don't go dark on your customers and your prospects. I mean, out of sight, out of mind.
Exactly.
Okay. Any other questions? I know we're pushing the last couple minutes here.
I did not have any other questions that I gathered early. Let me just check chat now and see if anything else is coming through, but I think we are good.
I hope everyone
We're
took
just
away.
getting some thank yous coming through. I'm double checking, but yeah, we are getting some thank yous. I definitely believe that you kind of highlighted some very important things that have taken on such a new perspective, especially after this last year for businesses and companies and just people thinking about what they might need to redirect and change just to make everything more customer centric and really reach the customers you've always had or the customers you want to add to kind of the portfolio of who's coming to your businesses. So definitely a lot of great helpful information. I do want to remind everybody on here that this keynote is recorded, so it'll be available again. If you didn't have time to really answer all those questions, those 10 questions in the beginning, you can like freeze that slide and go through it again, maybe with your teams. Definitely very helpful and very appreciative of the information and the time you gave us today, Laura. Just a lot more thank yous, so no more questions.
Thank you, everyone. Thanks for giving me your time today. I'm open to hearing from anyone. Feel free to send me an email or a LinkedIn. I think someone might have put that information in the chat. Look forward to hearing from you. And thank you, Liz, for having me today. So appreciate it.
Absolutely. Thank you again for being here, and stay safe and be well.
Bye, everyone. Take care.